President Trump visited the battleground state of Ohio today and spoke at a U.S. Army tank plant in the town of Lima. His appearance was just 2 hours and 50 Cracker Barrels west of the recently closed GM plant in Lordstown, a factory he says should reopen immediately.
What's going on with General Motors? Get that plant open or sell it to somebody and they'll open it. Everybody wants it. Sell it to somebody or open it yourselves. Get it going now, and the UAW will help you.
Some economists believe the president's attempts to save manufacturing jobs is actually hurting workers because his tariffs have cost GM and Ford about $1 billion each. There's also concern amongst the White House economic team that he'll have a hard time delivering the economic boom he promised on the campaign trail without the help of Congress passing some major new legislation and possibly more tax cuts. A wise man once said that elections are about the economy, stupid. But are we stupid to believe a great economy can last forever? Here to politely discuss. American Majority CEO and former speechwriter for George W. Bush, Ned Ryun, is here, and host of the Richard Fowler Show. It is Fox News contributor Richard Fowler. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Good to see you, Kennedy.
Good to be back, Kennedy.
So, Ned, I will start with you. The Army doesn't really need a lot of tanks. GM has the right to close plants if people aren't buying sedans. And the president is not going to get any more tax cuts passed through a democratically controlled House. So with all of those circumstances, what can he do to keep that beautiful 3% GDP growth?
Well, you make a good point, Kennedy. Right now, he's kind of sailing alone. Congress is going to do nothing, of course, with the Democratic House. Forget tax cuts, until after 2020, depending on who keeps the House. I think the one thing that he can do right now, Kennedy, is continue to cut the regulatory state. He did an excellent job the first year. I think he cut 1,500 regulations year one. He's continuing to do that. The only problem with that, he gets to do it by executive order. The only problem is that that's not permanent. It can be undone by the future president. But I think what he's left with is using the power of the pen to do that. I think he's got the ability to do other things, continue to cut and shrink government. I've actually proposed, Kennedy, after this latest government shutdown, we have 800,000 non-essential employees. We've got about 7 million job openings in the private sector. I think one of the things Trump could do right now is begin a program to migrate those 800,000 out of government into the private sector, and by so doing, continue to shrink government. I mean, that's one of the big things that he can do, Kennedy, is shrink it.
Anything the president can do to cut spending and shrink the size and scope of the federal government, that will certainly help the economic agenda. And when the economy is healthy, families are happy. So, Richard, obviously, there are some issues here that the president is still contending with. Even in the Midwest and places like Ohio, these car manufacturers, Mary Barra said that, sure, the United Auto Workers are making it very difficult to keep these factories open. That's absolutely true. But also, the tariffs are not helping. If you were on the president's economic team, what would you tell him about some of the tariff negotiations with China?
Well, here's the problem, and I want the president to do well in China, but the problem is that he's using the tariffs as his only sort of tool. And in doing so, if the Chinese decide to walk away from the table, what you have is a situation where our farmers get hurt, our automakers get hurt, and there is no repercussions. There's nothing you could do to roll that back besides getting rid of those tariffs. And I think this economy is a lot worse off than people think it is, and which is why the White House has predicted some numbers that other economists are saying this could only get worse. Remember, we are at a $22 trillion deficit right now.
Yes,
and on top of that,
debt load that President Obama doubled.
Yeah, but under President Trump, it's only gone up even more exponentially. Not to mention the fact we are at a 243-year high.
I'm going to have to stop you there because there's a difference between geometric and exponential growth. And this is not exponential growth.
The fact is that this deficit is exploding.
If you're going to use the term, use the right term.
Okay, hold on.
Kennedy. And let's also not forget that there's 7 million Americans that are 90 days behind in their car payment, which is a leading indicator that the economy is moving in the wrong direction for working families.
It's also a leading indicator that people are spending more than they take in, and maybe they're following suit of the federal government, who's doing the same thing. The federal government is spending way too much money, and Barack Obama and George W. Bush. They all suffer from the same malady, which is an addiction to spending. Go ahead, Ned.
Well, I would make a couple points here.
Better Ned than Red. I've always said it. Go ahead.
We've almost had 2 years of 3% growth. We now have unemployment under 4%, which has been that way for 12 months. But I would agree with you, Kennedy. At some point, we actually have to make really hard decisions when you look at Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid,
this is new
and
video,
all the
by
safety,
the way, of
welfare.
the president
it's about
descending
60%.
Marine One, walking up to the White House from his trip to Ohio, concluding that, and on to another day, and probably another Twitter battle with George Conway. Last word,
or John
Richard.
McCain's ghost.
Oh, that's
Either
awful.
Or. But herein lies the problem. The problem. Herein lies the problem is that
because we got to go.
Fair. Is that Donald Trump is basically, he's promised the American people this amazing economy, and the truth of the matter is, for working families, this economy isn't that amazing.
You want the economy to be bad, and that's really sad.
No,
I
don't want the economy to be bad, but the proof is in the pudding. When 7 million Americans are 90 days behind in their car payments, it's a bad economy.
I want to be rich. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with being rich, but in Donald Trump's economy, the middle-class tax cut wasn't even permanent, but the corporate tax cut was.
And Democrats are bold enough to make it permanent. They should all be
Neither
permanent
were
tax
Republicans.
cuts. They should be permanent tax cuts.
Neither were Republicans, because they couldn't find to pay for.
Budgets and permanent spending cuts, because they're all weenies, and they've lost their balloon
Republicans were not willing to do this in the 2 years where they had all the chambers.
I love you madly. Richard, Ned, thank you both.